Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. I will wait as everyone is populating into the chat room, and please, while you're in there, please coming into the thing, please tell us where you're from, where you're coming from today. We're excited about this. I think this topic is going to be outstanding for no matter where you are in your career, where you want to go in your career. So please definitely tell us where we're glad you're here today, and please tell us where you're coming from for sure and where you are. Hi, Erica. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate your time with us. Um, Hi, Laura from Alpharetta. That's where I am as well. So we're neighbors. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alice Fox, and I'm the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. We are glad to have you here today. As I said, a few housekeeping items before we get going. That this is a 1 hour recorded webinar. If you have any technical questions, please email me at alicefox@talentconnections.net. Participants will be muted. However, you can submit your questions through the question and answer feature, or obviously through the chat. Then we've got everybody from Marietta and Dallas, Texas. Hi, Rhonda, Ellenwood, Georgia, Julie Jertson. It's so great to see everybody. But also audience participation, as I said, is highly encouraged. So make sure you go into the chat box, or you can submit your question and answer. Cooper will have a question and answer time at the end of the session as well. This webinar has been approved for 1 SHRM professional development credit, and that activity code will be given at the conclusion of the webinar. Today, we are glad to have and welcome to our webinar Cooper K-Mac. He is a data-driven communicator, coach, and business strategist who has helped more than 500 professionals sharpen their communication and presentation skills since founding Speaking Up Your Game in 2018. Known for his engaging, practical approach, Cooper has earned consistent praise from clients across leading organizations such as the Home Depot, Visa, Deloitte, Wayfair, and the U.S. Department of Defense. A seasoned speaker and MC since 2002, Cooper has honed his craft across business, civic, and faith-based settings. His 5 years with Toastmasters International deepened his expertise in public speaking, and he continues to study what distinguishes exceptional communicators in today's marketplace. Before launching Speaking Up Your Game full-time, Cooper spent over a decade in the corporate world with Coca-Cola and Amyris, where he developed a reputation for turning complex data into clear, actionable insights. Building on this foundation, Cooper founded TrendWise Insights, where he helps small and mid-sized businesses uncover the hidden value in their data. His clients span industries from software and internet marketing to B2B lab supplies. Originally from East Tennessee, but a graduate of Emory University with a master's from my alma mater itself, Indiana University, woohoo, Cooper has called Atlanta home for 27 years. Thank you so much, Cooper, for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to your insight and tips and tricks on this subject matter for sure.
Well, Alice, certainly I appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for joining today. So we are going to actually unpack and talk about how to crush your nerves, and specifically as it relates to the workplace. So how do you speak more confidently at work? And so by the end of today, just to unpack this a little bit, you're going to know the 5 real reasons you get nervous, and why the usual suspects that you think of that make you nervous are really just distractions. So we're actually going to get to the root of this today. We're going to talk about the shifts you need to make to help you in the mental game and the physical game so that you can speak confidently. And then we're going to give you some key actions that you can implement yourself and crush your nerves, especially in high stakes moments. Now, typically when I do this, whether it's the master class or the seminar, we ask people on the front, like, how nervous do you get when speaking or presenting in the workplace? But every time the data comes back basically in this realm. So we all sit on this spectrum of nervousness. And about 55% of people would say they're always nervous. Now, that could be extremely nervous, slightly nervous, or just, a little bit nervous, but they can get through it. But then about a third of people would say it depends. It depends on the setting. And maybe it's a big meeting or a big, presentation they have. And that's when the nerves really hit them, but only 10% of people say they're calm. And even for me, I've been doing this 20 years and it's still, nerves can still bite me. But now that we understand the root, we can get past them. But this is the interesting part about the data. And this is the part that people just kind of are flabbergasted by. In the bottom here, there is no statistical correlation between how often you speak and how nervous you get. No correlation. So you can speak often and still get nervous every time in front of any audience. And so that's the thing that blows people's minds, because we would all say, and Toastmasters would say, just do it more often, just do it more often. But that's not actually the solution. Now, for my own story here, as Alice said earlier, I've had 5 years of formal speaking training. I did that through Toastmasters early in my career. And then I've had 13 years in front of executives, both at Coca-Cola and at Amyris in these business ventures that we got going on now. But I've had 20 years of speaking and presenting in the workplace. Before any of the Coca-Cola world, I was in commercial real estate presenting to real estate investment trusts, so big time entities that manage billion-dollar portfolios. And so I've had this experience, but in that journey, there were definitely some ups and downs. So for my own story, despite 5 years of Toastmasters and emceeing student conferences with 300 students at it, okay, and this picture is from one of those student conferences. Despite that, in 2011, I had my first chance to present in front of a VP of revenue at Coca-Cola, and I bombed. And I wish I could tell you, like, oh, it wasn't that bad. No, I literally bombed the presentation. And again, this is after 5 years of Toastmasters. How did I bomb this workplace presentation? And that ultimately they sat me on the bench for 2 years and wouldn't let me back in front of executives because it was so bad. I mean, I was up till 3 a.m. the night before. I literally went to bed, my stomach in knots. I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And there's no bow, like literally just absolutely bombed it. But within a couple years had kind of figured out how to speak and present and communicate and build presentations in the workplace. And I would say I was highly capable, but I was not confident in the big moment. So all the, like, the nervousness, the visible nervousness, the sweating, all of that. And this presentation is actually from 2015, still struggling with those nerves. Now here's the funny part. In 2014, my group director at Coca-Cola, she had me leading workshops for 6 sales leaders every 2 weeks on how to speak and present better. Like, they would present, I would give them coaching and feedback. I was doing interview mentoring for people to get promoted. And I saw during that time these patterns of improvement, but everyone would always ask me, how do I get past the nerves? And I always told them the same thing. You just do it scared. Because for me, no matter how good I got at this, no matter how much I practiced, no matter how much I would rehearse, my heart would pound, I would sweat a lot, my mouth would go dry. And I just had this belief that this was always going to be this way. Like, it just was always going to be this way. So people would ask me, how do you get past the nerves? And I would just say, do it scared. That's what I said every time. You know what? You just do it scared. And ultimately, I wonder if you might feel this. Maybe you get nervous in front of a group of people. Maybe you find yourself nervous in front of executives or senior leaders. Maybe your boss in a big presentation. Maybe you get super anxious when all eyes are on you. Or maybe you over prepare, but then you panic that you're going to blank out. And so that rises up. Like, if you just hesitate a moment and you're like, I lost my place, that causes you to panic. But for me personally, in my own journey, this sent me on a mission to, like, why did I get so anxious sometimes, but not others? And how does my own personal insecurity play in? And then the real question, can I ever break the cycle? Well, fast forward, and I did discover the secret, and I actually started coaching people on a paid situation in 2018. So in 2018, literally 7 years ago this month, started doing paid coaching for speaking coaching. And since then, we've coached over 300 people one to one. We've had collected over 55-star reviews. We've done workshops just this year alone, just in 2025. We've had 200 in workshops for workplace communication. Now, I understand there's keynote speaking and all this stuff. No, no, no. We do workplace communication coaching, right? We've had 35 people we've done virtual cohorts with, where a group of people get together and 6 to 10 people in a given week over 5, 6 weeks, we unpack and work through how to become a better communicator, how to get past the nerves in the workplace. And ultimately, we built and curated our own online course to supplement what we do and how we add value to folks. Now, my real hope in this whole session right now, my hope is to save you the 10 years it took me floundering around to help you become more confident and credible when you speak in the workplace. And so that's obviously what we're talking today. So maybe in the chat, if you would, just humor me a second. And I'm going to try to pull this up myself. I would love to know, like, what are the reasons? You don't have to say why you get nervous, but what would you say are the reasons people get nervous? Like, what would you say? Maybe throw that in the chat. Alice, I don't know for yourself if you ever find yourself nervous, but I see high stakes coming through. But why do you think people get nervous? Okay.
Me is just for me personally, while we're waiting for people and yeah, large audiences presenting while on camera. Mine is just the fear of failure, or saying something ridiculous or not, and having everybody kind of glassed over, not to be engaging or something. So that's more of mine, is a fear of failure. Blanking out. Yep. All the intention on it is on you, presenting while on camera, large audiences, high stakes, needing to influence and persuade. Yep. These are
Yeah.
all great ones, I would say. Ditto, ditto, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's what most people say. And Alice, to your point, most people say they fear failure. Okay. A lot of people say they fear judgment, like they fear the judgment of the room. Other people say when I'm not prepared, like I get nervous when I'm not prepared. And then turns out, oh, yeah, Lena, the anticipating every question and having an answer prepared. Yeah, right. When we don't have that. But I'm not prepared enough is another reason people say they get nervous. Now, about a quarter of the people that I coach one to one, they end up kind of living in this space. Maybe it's, IT consulting, but English is not their first language. And so they constantly say, my vocabulary is enough. I can't talk at this level. And so my English skills aren't that good. So it makes me nervous. And so a lot of people say that these are the 4 reasons. And so I want to unpack why these are distractions. But first, I want to talk about what happens physiologically when we get nervous. So we need to understand this. First, it's this idea of, right, you've heard this fight or flight, but in your brain, your amygdala gets triggered. And that's that fear response, that flight response. And so it gets triggered and it sends this message to your hypothalamus and everything starts to kick in, right? So your adrenaline kicks in. That's why you increase your heart rate, you increase your blood pressure, your pupils dilate, right? Your breathing quickens. All of these things are a very normal part of the adrenaline cycle that hits your body. And it's called your sympathetic nervous system, or sometimes you'll read about it and they call it SNS, right? And so these things all happen. Now, the other thing is there's some hormones released to the front of your brain. Now, what the nice part is like when you have adrenaline and can focus more clearly, you've got the right amount of adrenaline. But if it's overwhelmed, it can be too much on your brain, and that's why you can blank in a moment. But this is why you sweat. This is why your muscles tense up. Your muscles tense up. That's why people say my throat closes up. That happens, and then you're actually, the dry mouth that you feel is your salivation reduces because your body's getting into this like fight or flight mode. So this is physiologically what happens. Now, I talk to people all the time. Some people, just their amygdala is literally triggering like an anxiety trigger, even at the thought of it or in certain moments. And it's not that they are nervous about anything, but it's just that they've had this trigger response. And that certainly happens. But ultimately, this pattern kind of dies down, right? When the nerves subside a little bit, and ultimately our parasympathetic nervous system is activated. This is where your body returns to a normal state. So they call this the PNS. So the SNS is what heightens you up. The parasympathetic kind of cools you back down. And that's what happens when you get back to a normal state, right? And maybe this is you've experienced this at some point in your life. I know in my own story and in my own world, a big part of how this plays out is after this whole episode is done, like my shirt is just very wet. And that's just a reality of like when this happens, I will sweat. And so that's how it starts to settle down. And your body's now cooling itself off, right? So there's a reduction in the stress hormone and stress response. And so that's what happens in these like really high nerve wracking moments that happens physiologically. But I want to pose a couple questions that I think will help sort of lead us to these bigger things. So I'm trying to get it to go forward here. There we go. So I want to pose two questions to you. Why is it that you can go to a meeting with a team of your peers unprepared and you're not nervous at all, but yet you can be over prepared for a meeting with executives or senior leaders and you're still nervous? Why is that? Well, we want to pack it, but I just like that's kind of how people think about it. It's like, well, I have to prepare. Well, why is it you can be unprepared and okay, but then over prepared and not okay? And so, in all of this, in what we've got, ultimately are the 5 real reasons you get triggered. Okay. So, this is where we're going to, yep, and the stakes feel so much higher. So, this is where we're going to dive into the 5 reasons. Now, the first 2 reasons have to do with this key word, and they're related to this word risk. Risk. The amount of risk you feel, but specifically, the number one reason is reputation risk. So on the left-hand side, you can see it there. But this idea of reputation risk, as the nerves, or sorry, as the risk increases of caring about what other people think about what you say, what you present, our nerves have a tendency to increase. This is why wedding toasts are so nerve-wracking. This is why the time in front of your boss is so nerve-wracking, or your boss's boss or executives or leaders, is because ultimately at the root of the fear of failure, at the root of the fear of judgment, is what are they going to think of me? Now, before you start to feel less than because you struggle with this, first of all, we are social creatures by nature. You're normal. Like, this is normal to care about our reputation. But at the core of it, we are focused on something related to what are they going to think of me? And that is the first reason we get nervous. Now, the second reason we get nervous has to do with our financial risk. So, as the risk increases, our nerves increase. Now, financial risk is interesting because it can mean different things to different people, and it certainly depends on your financial context. So, here's an example, right? There are some people who are out there and like they can be making decisions financially and just have no idea of the consequences, right? They're fishing, the bear's behind them, it's coming for them, and they're just oblivious, right? And so they seem like no care in the world, and we're sitting there going, I would be a stress ball in that situation. In that instance, let me give you an example. So imagine you're a salesperson. I'm gonna give you a pretty specific example here. You're a salesperson. Maybe you make 75,000 a year, and you're about to go try to win a $2 million account, $2 million annually for the business, and the commission to you is $150,000. So your salary 75, your bonus is going to be 150. Now, if there's not a nest egg behind you, if there's not savings behind you, and like you've got bills coming and bills to pay, right? The nerves are going to be higher because you feel that financial risk, right? It's a big bonus. Now, let's say the CEO of this company decides to go with you on the appointment. The CEO, this is a $200 million business. So it's a $200 million business, and this is $2 million in annual revenue for that business. Does that carry the weight to that person? No, because at the end of the day, his financial context is completely different. So your financial context can play into the amount of financial risk you feel. And again, there's other people. They just have no sense of risk tolerance. Like they have a higher risk tolerance, so they put all the chips in. And you and I would never do that. Don't beat yourself up because of that. This is like they have this, we don't. That's okay. You're normal if you don't push all your chips in. But we hear the stories about the people willing to put all the chips in. So again, the first 2 reasons, reputation risk and financial risk. All right. Now I'm going to move to number 3 and number 4. Number 3 and number 4 have to do with your mental talk track. All right. The mental talk track. Now, number 3 is about comparing yourself. Now, the problem is we compare ourselves to people who maybe they're full-time speakers, or maybe they're on YouTube and social media, and like we see these people and they just look so natural on camera, and like we just feel less than, we feel inferior, and we're comparing ourselves. I'm not as articulate as, or I'm not as good, speaking, communicating as, and we compare ourselves to other people. And so that ends up eating at us and eroding our confidence. And I'll say this for me, for my own story, like I can watch speakers and communicators, and I'm like, man, I just don't know that I'm there. And I can do this to myself just as easily. So it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. When you compare yourself, it can erode your confidence. Now, number four, this one's really key and sneaks in on a bunch of people and they don't even realize it. And that's negative self talk, or what we call negative self judgments. So if you look at the yellow box on the screen, Sheena Hankin is a psychotherapist. And years ago, 25 plus years ago, she wrote a book called Complete Confidence. And she says our negative self talk and our own negative self judgment do more to erode our confidence than any other factor. And what Dr. Hankin talks about is that it's not that we need to positively judge ourselves, it's that we don't need to judge ourselves at all. Because on one side of the equation, you have pride, right, with a positive self judgment. And the other side, you have like, so it's pride and ego, or kind of this like self defeating talk. But both of those have a tendency to go awry in the long run. So she says, just don't make any judgments at all. And we're going to unpack what you do instead here in a little bit. But the negative self talk for you might look like, I've never been good at this. I don't have a good vocabulary. I always stumble and fumble on my words. Like you're talking yourself out of it before you ever give yourself a shot. Uh, I think somebody mentioned earlier, Alice, like the engagement, someone looking at their phone, like, oh, they must be so bored. And I'll tell y'all, full transparency, like I appreciate you engaging in the chat because now I know at least you're engaged, but there's probably a couple people who are disengaged, right? If I'm looking around, I've luckily done this long enough where I know that it's valuable, but like at the same time, I'm kind of stressing, like, is this connecting with people? So I can beat myself up that like maybe this isn't good enough. Maybe people want more. And so again, even though I've been doing this a long time, I'm human. We're all human. We can struggle with the negative self-talk and erode our confidence. So of these first four, how do we fight these? So I want to share with you how we fight these. I wish these were like light switches in your life that you could walk over to it and turn it off. And fortunately, that's not the case. So the way that I like to talk about these are like dials in your life, gas stove dials, okay? Or volume dials even. And the thing is we've got to learn how to turn down the dials. So if we're focused on the risk, right, and our nerves are getting up, we've got to learn how to turn that dial down. The self judgment, right? We've got to hear it, listen to it, and we've got to turn it down. And then the comparison, right? The comparison, we've got to turn down those dials. Okay. So the first four are all fought by turning down the dials. Now, reason number five, and the way that I typically like to ask this is, what do big time teams do and athletes do in big games? Right. And so normally I would ask a room, like, what do you guys think? But at the end of the day, they walk into a game and they execute a game plan. So in the early or the late 90s, the University of Tennessee won a football title. They won the first BCS bowl against Florida State. And what was interesting is they scripted their first 17 plays to the game because they knew everybody was going to be super nervous at the front of the game. So they had these 17 plays that they were going to run no matter what. Now, they didn't tell anybody this until basically like the game time, but they knew the 17 plays they were going to run. But it helped everybody get into the game and get into the momentum of it so they could make adjustments as they went. But for everybody, they executed a game plan. Now, Charlie Mayer is a sports psychologist, and he said even professionals need a game plan. And he said, this is what he says about professional athletes, sticking with their routines in the days leading up to a big game helps them stay focused mentally and emotionally. Now, what he says is actually the wrong thing to say is it's just another game. It's just another game. So for someone to say to you, it's just another presentation, notice how that never works because you feel that reputation risk, you feel that financial risk. And so when you have a game plan to stick with coming up to your big game, your big presentation, your big meeting. That's going to help you. However, most people, most people lack a game plan. So you need a game plan. We all need a game plan in a repeatable game plan when we speak and present. And I'll say this, the same is true when you lead meetings, because I've been nervous leading meetings before, right? Maybe I have like a 3 minute portion, but I've got to facilitate the conversation and I've got, the person who takes us off track every time, right? But how you do that when you have a repeatable game plan that can help you keep your nerves at bay when you speak and present. So I'm going to give you the summary of these real quick on the screen here. So, in summary, the 5 real reasons are reputation risk, financial risk, comparison, negative self judgment, and you lack a game plan to execute. Now, I want to ask you a question if you're willing to play along. And this is funny because in workshops, this is where this breaks, like everybody's kind of anxiety of the day starts to break down because we just launch in and so, like at your tables. Now, I want to talk about where is your root? Which is your root? What's at the heart of your past nerves? So, if you would be willing in the chat, would love to just like based on these 5 factors, right? So reputation risk that we care about it, whether people think, financial risk, comparison, negative self-judgment, and lacking a game plan. Oh, thank you guys for sharing. Comparison. Yep, absolutely. Negative self-judgment. I hope we get a couple more. Alice, I don't know if you're willing to jump in here and chime in and share with the group or not. I know it's a little bit
Yeah,
vulnerable.
I'm kind of going between the reputation risk and the comparison. I'm really good at negative self-judgment too, because I'm a winner at that one. Because winners, I'm an overachiever at that one too. So I was struggling to see which one of these would be my first, but I guess I did go to the reputation risk was the one that I kind of landed on for sure. And we're getting
Yeah.
a lot of great. I appreciate
Yeah.
everybody saying theirs too. It's interesting to hear what everybody's things are for sure.
Yeah, and Erica, to your point is like spot on, and this comes up in interviews a lot, right? It's that reputational risk and the financial risk of employment. And you talked about like you might have a presentation that goes so poorly, you're out the door. I, in my time at Amorous, I did feel like that at one point, and so right when you feel that, your nerves are going to be heightened. So y'all, thank you so much for engaging in the chat. We really appreciate that. So I want to just tell the story real quickly of how I discovered the secret to like getting past the nerves. And this goes beyond what we just talked about. So ultimately, years ago, my wife and I got sent on like high ropes camp meets marriage retreat meets like church camp. And we end up flying to California to this place for a week. And we had 2 little kids staying back home with the grands. And so we go to this place, and there's a high ropes course that looks very similar to the picture. And it's called the Odyssey. But I end up like I have a fear of unstable heights. I just do. And so we're harnessed in with everything and we are double clipped, anchored onto the line. And so there's no real risk of falling, but I still have just this major fear of unstable heights. So as we're climbing up from the ground level to level 1 to level 2 level 3, like the sweat just starts pouring down me. And again, I can do it scared. I can do it scared. But we get to the top and I start holding on. If you notice on the side, the telephone pole, like there's a whole platform and we've got 16 of us, 8 married couples up there. And then we're going down 3 different lanes. And I'm literally holding on to the right hand pole, like, y'all, I'm good. I'm going to do this thing, but I'm going to do it scared. And I'm profusely sweating. And everybody's laughing at me. And I don't care because I don't like unstable heights. Again, I can do it. I just don't like it. So we go from section 1, in between, go to section 2. Now we get done with section 2 and we're going into section 3. And our counselor walks out on the line and she starts talking about what we're going to do in section 3. I don't even remember what she's saying, but as she turns to walk to the other side of, to the end of the whole thing, she loses her balance and falls. Now she's double harnessed in. Let me be clear. She's got a little more slack on her line than we all do. So she actually falls below the cable wire. So she's literally dangling in the air below the cable wire. And she has nothing, she can't reach the line. Like every time she reaches for the line, the physics of it, she ends up going the opposite way because she's got nothing to push against. And so she finally yells down to the ground to the safety counselor and says, Malcolm, I'm stuck. I need help. Can you come? And so Malcolm starts climbing up the back of this thing. And meanwhile, somebody from our team like walks out on the line pretty nonchalantly, like grabs her hand, pulls her up, walks over to the other side. And like before the whole thing's really a panic, like it's kind of over because two people get to the other side, the counselor and the other person. But then all of a sudden, the people like the group starts yelling, and all of a sudden I'm realizing they're yelling at me because I'm the one who walked out on the line, grabbed the counselor's hand, pulled it up, walked across to the other side, and there was no fear at all. Not a single ounce. Like, didn't even think about it. Just walked across, grabbed her hand, pulled her up, walked across. Didn't even think about what was happening until it was done. And so everybody's like, what's going on? But in that moment was this principle that I was suddenly thrust into caring more about someone else than my own safety. And that is in this where this lies. Now, I'll say this. This echoes a 2015 Yale study where they took a group of about 75 people. They gave them an app and they had them track their mood. They had them track like what they went through on a daily basis. And ultimately what they found is this. The people who were outward focused, focused on caring for other people, showing kindness throughout their day, just giving people a smile throughout the day. They were more resilient, they handled setbacks better, and ultimately they had more confidence than the other group where setbacks tended to push them down, right? So the negative self talk, things were starting to press on them. But this study echoed the same thing. But ultimately, the lesson in all of this for all of us as it relates to speaking and presenting is we've got to learn how to dial down the focus on ourselves and increase the focus on adding value to our audience in the workplace. Now, the beautiful part about this in the workplace is everything rises and falls in the workplace on value. And it makes it easier than your high school presentation where you're speaking in front of your classmates because it's basically about what they think and getting the A. But in the business world, it actually becomes easier because we can come up and figure out ways to add value to an audience. And so that's what we've got to do is dial down the focus on ourselves and dial up the focus on adding value. And that is everything. And we're going to unpack that a little bit more here today. So I just want to be clear. Where does confidence come from? Let's just create a clear path. Okay. So for you personally, right? Self-judgment free, not judging yourself better than others, not judging yourself worse than others, no judgment at all. Focused on bringing value. So I just want you to pause for a second. Just think for a moment. That inner critic voice just kind of goes quiet for a little bit. Okay. It's just not there. All right. You know and have a game plan to add value to an audience. Say it's your executives. Say it's your boss's boss. Say it's a group of people in your company. Maybe you're speaking at a town hall, whatever it may be. But let's say you have that game plan for value, right? You're not beating yourself up. You're not overthinking it. And you have a game plan to deliver value that you know they want, that meets what they want and need to know. How would you feel? This is what we call teaching and speaking and presenting for value. Now, value in the workplace has three key components that I want to make sure we go through. Okay. Number one is we've got to be relevant for an audience. You all have heard this. You've all been in some meeting sometime when someone just started yapping and maybe they had a point, but it wasn't relevant for the audience. Like, hey, that's not even relevant for what we're talking about here. Some of you have somebody in mind specifically, I know. But the first thing we've got to do is be relevant for our audience. So we've got to help them understand like what's the connection to them? Why is this important to them? Why does this matter to them? Right? The second piece is we got to be clear. We do have to be clear in our message. And the more you can be clear in your message, the better off you're going to be in feeling good about that message, right? So when you increase your clarity, you're going to increase your confidence. And then the third is we need to be well delivered in our execution. Now, let me say this about well delivered. You may be watching me today. You may be, comparing yourself and think like I'm just not that well spoken. And here's what we find over and over in the business world. And I'm going to give you like the real high level version of this real quick. When we distill well delivered down to this, okay, the person who can talk about a complex topic conversationally is the expert in the room. Let me say it again. The person who can talk about a complex topic conversationally is the expert in the room, right? When someone's talking to you conversationally, they know the topic or you feel they know the topic, right? So we talk a lot about being conversational. We talk a lot about there's a reality here. If you can reduce your filler words, slow your pace, and project through your sentences. That's what we talk about in Well Delivered. And when you do that well, that's all you have to do in the business world. You're hearing more animation out of me. Sure, I'm making a presentation to an audience. I want you to be engaged. But in the business world, be conversational, right? Let's get rid of the filler words. Let's slow down so people can follow along. And let's just project our voice so we don't mumble through sentences. You do those four things well, you are going to knock it out of the park. All right. So communicating effectively and confidently at work is about learning to increase the value of your message to the audience by being relevant, clear, and well delivered. So the next time you're working on a presentation, I just want you to be thinking about how can I be relevant, clear, and well delivered? Okay. That's value. So ultimately, crushing your nerves in the workplace takes three simple things. Number one, you've got to understand the root of your nerves. And again, 90% of people get nervous. So don't beat yourself up when you get nerves, but get to the root of them. Because when you get to the root, like I care about what other people think and then can go, and I'm here to add value, you suddenly stop thinking and worrying about yourself, right? Number two, you got to have a repeatable game plan to bring value when you speak and present in the workplace. And you got to be relevant, clear, and well delivered. And then the third thing, you've got to know you can deliver value when the moment comes. And there's a whole process under that, but the simple version of it is, do you know your storyline? Do you know your key points? Right? Do you know why it matters to them? And then can you deliver it effectively? All right. So you do these three things, you are going to crush your nerves. Now, often I get people ask, okay, thanks. But how do I do it? And this is, I think, my last key slide here. How do I do it when the stakes are the highest? Okay. How do I do it when the stakes are the highest? And this is what I tell people. This is almost like your game day plan. This is the night before you go to bed. And like if you've ever lost sleep over speaking and presenting in the workplace, this is what I would encourage you to do to think about, going to bed the night before. So one, you got to anchor to your purpose and value you're bringing to an audience. Like why is your message important and valuable to the audience? And then you've got to make sure you connect those dots for them, right? But know your purpose and know your value to the audience. Okay. Number two, this is what I tell people to know. If you know the people and the place, and here's the thing, if you know your key storyline, and here's what I'll say on this. You've probably over practiced and over scripted something in the past. I've certainly done it. Everybody can tend to do it in high stakes moments. But the problem is nobody remembers the detail, the nitty gritty. What they remember, the key storyline. So if you can keep your main thing, the main thing with a good, clear opening, right? Know your key points in your wrap up. If you do those three things well, people are going to walk away with what you want them to walk away with, which is valuable for them, right? So when I talk about knowing the people, I'm just going to go back up here, know what they want to know and know what they need to know. So when you can address what they want to know and need to know, it's kind of like when someone says, I want to lose weight, right? They want to know how to lose weight. They need to know a diet and exercise plan. Hope that analogy makes sense. But right, they have one view, but they need some other things. So there's want and need to know. And then the last thing is breathe. And y'all, I actually fought the breathing one for a really long time because I was like, it's overrated. But science backs this up both neurologically and physiologically, that three deep breaths. So big breath in, hold it for 2 seconds, and then push it way out. It's not the first one that's going to help. It's not the second one that's going to help. It's the third one where you really your body starts to relax because you're basically controlling your body when the nerves get up and the breathing starts quickening, right? Let's say your boss comes at you and all of a sudden like you just had a bad day and everything's kind of coming at you. Breathing through that can help you settle down and go, what do they want and need to know in this moment? So these three things right here, the night before, right? If you're a little bit uneasy, right before going in, when your heart starts pitter pattering, take some breaths, re-anchor to your purpose, know your storyline, and you're going to help yourself reduce your nerves tremendously when you speak and present. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope this has been impactful for you. I'm going to now go over here to open it up for questions. Now, real quick, just so you know, in the bottom right is a QR code. We're going to send this out, but also if you want, I've got a one-page summary from today that can help you, and you can just keep it on your desk. So if you want that, you could hit that. But also, I think, Alice, help me out here. I think we're going to send that out, right?
Yes, we are. We
Okay.
are going to send that out to everyone, but yes, you can do a QR code, or when we have the notes, we'll send out the recording of this, and we will send this one-page summary as well.
Awesome. So I want to open it up for questions, and you can ask them through the chat. And I think there's also a Q&A function, right?
Yep, there is. There's a question and answer if you want to do that. It's a little more anonymous, or you can do it in the chat. We're all friends here, so you can do that. We do have, Erica has a question there for us if you want to read through that.
Yeah. So do you have any advice for the times when you were walking into a meeting, knowing that some in the audience are loaded for bear? Now, I don't, for example, a DEI expert who is proposing changes that, despite a solid business case, will be judged based on emotions and politics that they cannot change. So, Erica, it's a great question. And I think probably in the world of HR today is probably a lot of the question. And people, a lot of companies are working their way through this. Um, Here's what I would say: create a goal that the goal is the goal. Because then if there's a clear goal and a clear win, right? Staying focused on that can often be helpful when you feel the tension of the room and like, where's this going? The other piece that I'll say on this is over time, you can get more comfortable with like navigating people back in to a point. But I would say if everybody can agree on a win, that is a, or if there's a win that is proposed that is sort of everybody can kind of get behind, that is how you can sort of help this one. Eric, I'll tell you, this is a big one though. Like, I don't know that I'm answering it super well for you, but I would say focus on the goal and the objective and the win. Or if it's there, if it's like, hey, we want to hear this person out, right? Even if it's just we want to hear this person out and then talk about the merits or not merits of an idea, that's fine. But you're right. I mean, the DEI thing has got a lot of emotions, a lot of politics in it right now. I hope that answers your question. What other questions are there? I don't know if any came through the Q&A.
Yep, we do have one. Here's one. Great question, actually. I feel more comfortable speaking in person versus on camera, but times have changed.
Yeah.
How do you get used to speaking to larger audiences on camera? It's awkward to me.
It is awkward, and I think the awkwardness comes, so I'll address this. The awkwardness comes by you don't really have the body language feedback that you do in person. So I think that's one thing. So the way you get around that, in my mind, is you can do a couple things. One, ask for incremental feedback along the way. Hey, before I move on, does anybody have any questions? And if it's silent, it's silent. But if you're inviting their engagement through the process, then at least you know there's some people out there engaging with you. But I agree with you. Like the Zoom thing can be a little bit much. What I will say for you personally and for everybody here personally is I would encourage you to bring your world to your camera. So if you notice, like I've been looking at the camera for the most part, most of the time, right? I see people over here. This feels awkward if I'm trying to talk to somebody and they're looking over here. So you can help other audiences by looking at the camera. And look, I don't have to give it like really crazy stare eye contact, but um, getting people's incremental feedback along the way, I think is really helpful. Hey, what are we missing? Any questions before I move on? Or what questions do you have before I move on? Like, can just be small things that you can get it along the way. And part of it is, I think it's just, it is a different world. And so walking through it, asking for feedback. And if people aren't giving it to you, they may not have any questions, but just ask more questions along the way. That would be my suggestion.
Great. Another one we have is I'm an filler in my conversation and presentations. Any
Mhm.
tips to prevent this?
Yeah, filler words is happens often. And what I would say is the first thing you need to do is, and everybody should do it, is record themselves in a everyday conversation and then count the number of fillers they use in a minute. So the average is 5. If you're north of 5 per minute, like go back, listen to a minute, count like, so, and right. Count them up. If you have more than 5 per minute, you've got too many and you are impacting potentially your credibility. So that's one thing, count them up. But the way to get past it is You've got to, instead of saying like, don't say fillers, don't say fillers. That's like if I said, don't say pine trees or don't think about pine trees, don't think about pine trees. You're thinking about a pine tree, especially in Georgia. So
Mhm.
remember to pause. And the way you could practice is imagine yourself, and when you get to the end of a sentence, say the word in your head. So if you start a sentence, you move through it, and as you move through it, just say the word pause silently because that's going to help you move through it. Now, it's going to feel a little bit awkward at first, but time and time again, and this is feedback, like 92% of people that I coached in my first 50 were like, this is what they dealt with was too many filler words, like 10 plus per minute. So remember to pause and then practice breathing and speaking words. And I know that sounds like weird, but when people ask you a question, like if I said, how's the weather outside? A lot of people are going to say, and then they're going to answer the question. Instead, try breathing and speaking words. Think second grade, answer with a complete sentence. The weather outside is sunny. The weather outside is nice. Now, the other piece is this last. So, one, remember to pause. Two, breathe and speak words. Okay, that takes practice. And then number three, this is kind of crazy, but use transition statements. So if someone asks you a multi-part question, you might say, most people would say, well, this and this and this. So instead, try this. Use transition statements. Like the first thing I would say to that is this. The second thing I would say is, you know what? Ultimately, I think the conclusion on this is, and then you finish out. So remember to pause, breathe, speak words, and then use transition statements.
Excellent. Yeah. I went here. See, I said now I'm going to be conscious of it. But I was with my kids at who were in college at a speaking engagement, and the person was saying the word like every 3 seconds. And I kind of jokingly said, goodness, if this was a drinking game, every time he said like, we would be on the floor right now. And so so I showed my boys that yes, you can't, it does distract from something when you just constantly say that, just so they could hear, because I think a lot of younger, earlier career or younger people do say like a lot. And so I wanted to show them that that's what it sounded like. But goodness, that person did say like a lot. So
Yeah.
another question we have is any advice on managing interruptions during a presentation?
Yep. I want to come back to that. And I'm going to come back to Julie's question here in just a second.
Yep.
To everybody listening, the number one thing you can do to just increase your credibility and how you sound is pause more and reduce the fillers. So, for what that's worth, it sounds completely different. And I've got coaching story after coaching story of people that's been true for. So, Julie, to your question, any advice on managing interruptions during a meeting? So, um, there's interruptions and then there's like people jumping in and dialoguing along the way, right? So there's an element that a good facilitator, right? So you're making a presentation. Sometimes you need to not think about being the presenter. Sometimes you're the guide to a goal. Okay? So one, if you on the outset of your meeting or your presentation kind of like list, this is the win for the meeting today, then ultimately you could take that interruption and run it through the filter. Does this help us accomplish our goal? If so, you might let them talk for a minute. If they're going a bit long, you can always say this phrase: hey, I appreciate your input. 20 more seconds because I want to make sure we get everything in today. Another one is, let's say everybody's bantering back and forth and it's lively conversation and there's been enough time for it. You could say, okay, I want to take one, maybe two more comments. Or you could say, I want one more comment and then we need to keep moving. Right. So there's this element of when the interruption comes, I would say try to let it live there. But if it's not tied to the win and the goal of that meeting or the presentation or what you're trying to accomplish, you could say, hey, I want to try to make sure we cover everything. So can you give 20 more seconds and then we need to move on, right? But give them a little bit of time. So if you're doing a presentation and it's a 30-minute presentation, do not plan that you're going to talk for 30 minutes, right? Plan for like 15 to 18 because then people can talk along the way. And I will say this, it's a skill that's learned over time. It takes some time. Certainly there's like the navigation of like, I can't cut off the CEO. It depends. If you have a goal towards a meeting, hey, so and so, I'm so thankful for your input and I appreciate your engagement in the meeting. I just want to make sure we accomplish like the ultimate goal. But the question I would push everybody on is, did you set the goal from the outset of the meeting, right? Hey, good morning. Thanks for being here. Today we're going to talk about, and really our goal of this meeting is, if you list that, people will tend to stay on track more. Julie, I hope that's helpful for you.
Thank you. That is very helpful. For any other questions, there is a Cooper's information is on there. I would definitely suggest everyone to scan the QR code to get the one-page summary from today. I've done it myself already, but as I said, we are also going to be sending this out with our recording of the webinar that you'll have in your inbox for sure. One of the aha moments for me today, Cooper, really is everybody is so worried thinking that everybody is looking at them, but they're really not, because they're worried about themselves too. So it's so true that once you take that focus off of, not everybody is worried about you because they're worried about themselves. And that does take and for me, it's being prepared helps calm my nerves for sure as well.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Cooper, for your time today. I really appreciated this. I've taken great notes. I have a lot of notes, and I'm sure everybody has a lot of great information that they've received and nuggets as well. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for our Wednesday webinar series. A little information about who we are. Talent Connections is a human resources executive search and consulting firm located in Atlanta. We were founded in 1999, and we've spent over 2 decades perfecting our craft in HR services while creating thousands of transformative connections. To find out more, you can visit us at talentconnections.net. On our website, you will also find a section of our previously recorded webinars for you to view as well. Our sister company, Career Spa, provides career transition and coaching services tailored to each individual, helping you discover your career path and secure an advantage in this evolving job market. That website is www.careerspa.net for more information. As we mentioned, that this webinar is good for a one SHRM professional development code, and you will see that on your screen now that it is 25-EGUCP. So make sure that you write that down for your professional development credit recertification through SHRM. Also, remember to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will be Wednesday, November the 12th, the same time from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Cooper, thank you so much again for all of your help and tidbits and tips and feedback and information. We really appreciate it, and this has been such a valuable webinar, and I know I can see from everybody saying thank you and great information that we really appreciate. It was a great, lots of great information for us today.
Well, thank you again for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here, and thanks for everybody's engagement.
Of course. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day. Bye-bye.